Hi, everyone. Welcome to People Watch, the official podcast of the People Management Association of the Philippines.
Here, there are no motherhood statements, no hiding behind obsolete theories and adages, and no time to beat around the bush.
Just real talk with real people. I'm Jovenir, and here's a very real person co-hosting the show once again today. My favorite, kasi siya lang po talaga mag-isa, Miss Joan Chung.
Hi, Jove! Wala kang choice eh.
Hindi.
I have to be your favorite.
Yeah. Katulad ng, our guest is also our favorite. Yan. Lahat nilang biased na.
That's
How
enjoyable.
are you? Betty's off,
Oh,
right?
Right.
So how's
It's sunny and hot.
Still hot?
Sa
Hot na ngayon.
Mm-mm.
Dito rin, lumabas na ulit yung araw. Kahapon, for the past few days, very cloudy and windy. I did a video shoot yesterday. So, medyo mahangin talaga sa bundok.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, but that was good. It worked for us kasi hindi masyado mainit.
So, today we're going to talk about predicting performance, no?
Yeah, because, I'd like to understand, can we really do that? Can we really... Ano ba performance pinag-uusapan pala natin, Miss Joan?
Ano ba to, show? Performance ba natin to?
Anong performance pinag-uusapan natin?
Ayan, I
Work?
think ano to work, 'di ba? Kasi we're in HR. Ayan, but I think it's not just within work, no, but also in various aspects of our life. Tama ba? And I think
I hope so.
na-interrupt kita. Pero anyway, I think here with us today, we have our guest. We are privileged to have with us today the Director of Innovative Research of Children's Legacy Center, a nonprofit organization in California that serves victims of trafficking, abuse, and domestic violence. He consulted with different government agencies, nonprofit organizations, and MNCs in the areas of organizational research, human relations and communication, performance management and measurement, conflict and crisis management, and team building. He holds a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology from San Carlos University in Cebu and a PhD in clinical psychology from the Ateneo de Manila University. And he has since taught in various universities in various countries such as the Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, and the US. So let's all welcome Sir Frederick Bohos.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody.
Good.
Good afternoon, Joan. Good afternoon, Jove.
Yes.
Hi.
For
Ayan, may time difference tayo.
For everybody's information, Rick was my classmate back in college, but he's the brilliant one. I'm on the fringes of not passing and dropping off, so that's why he's our guest.
Ikaw ba yung class clown?
Ako yung hindi nga ako I don't think naalala ko ng mga teachers ko, Miss Joan eh.
He's the class artist and historian and writer.
Parang apparition lang ako doon eh. Minsan nakikita, minsan hindi. Yan. So, Rick, thank you for joining us here in California today.
Yes, it's a good evening here. I'm glad to be here.
Okay.
Right,
So,
that's great. So
Ms.
yung
Joan?
topic natin is predicting performance, no? Is it really possible, Rick, for us to predict performance? And ano ba tong may process ba yan?
Okay, that's a very straight question. Is it really possible? And I'm gonna give you a categorical answer. It is possible. As a matter of fact, we as human beings have been predicting people's behavior. Like you've been predicting your mother whether she's gonna give you your allowance or not. You've been predicting your boyfriend or girlfriend whether they're gonna show up or not. And as a matter of fact, we base our predictions on certain things like how did they behave in the past? Like are there signs? And looking for these signs or bases for our prediction, unconsciously we are actually creating what we call a model. Or in loose terms, we are actually creating a type. So like for example, when a lady says, oh, my type is tall, dark, and handsome, she's basing it on height and texture of the skin and face and thinking that these predictors, will produce the best date. So we have been predicting people's performances in the past. only that in organizations we'll have to make it more scientific. And there is a process to that, to your second question. Yes.
Okay.
So when does it start, Rick? When does it start? For example, the moment I think that will come in handy if you're doing especially the screening, yung mga interviews, right, Ms. Joan? Yung kapapasok o if you're
first
trying to
impressions, right?
Dapat tall, dark, and handsome ba? Kung lalaki.
Ikaw ba yan, sir?
or
Ganun
maybe
ba rin?
tall and handsome in the dark.
Okay. Tall and, yeah.
I love
Yeah.
Yes. Jovenir asked, when does it start? Well, it can actually start from any phase in the organization's existence. Usually, in my experience, startups do not care about predicting performance. They care about whether their business takes off. What usually happens is when people or when organizations get bigger and bigger, and they find difficulty in managing the human resources, that's when they feel they would need to have a better model, a better scientific way of predicting people's performance. So it could start as a data mining, data investigation as to whether or not our new hires will perform better than the others. So it could actually start in any phase of an organization's existence. It starts when the organization, usually the management, begins to say, hey, we need to have, we don't want to waste resources anymore. We have to hire good people now. And we have to have a very good basis for choosing from the pool of applicants.
This reminds me a lot of one movie. I forgot the title, but it's like they selected the best, and then those that qualify in their criteria, and then they just kept these people because they are stable and sure performers. No, so parang nakalimutan ko yung title eh. It's like No, I forgot.
Anong movie mo, yung mga paborito mong movie, Titanic. Yung ganun.
Ano naman to? A little bit sci-fi. Ayan.
Sci-fi.
Diba, yung DNA mo, parang they can scan it and they know that you don't belong to their community because you're not part of the criteria, select few, ganyan. I forgot the title. Let me look for it later.
Like is that not the basis and the foundation for profiling, and then what follows next will be discrimination? Kasi if you adhere to a certain profile na eto kasi successful to sila, galing from this school, ganito yung profile socially, and then eto yung mga grades nila, hindi ba magiging lalaki or babae ba kasi mag-fit yung lalaki, for example, in this particular industry, won't it actually start the foundation for discrimination?
That's a very good ethical question, because any form of technology can, and in many cases are used in discrimination and unfair hiring practices. So yes, any product of technology will always have that potential. Yes, it's also the basis for profiling. However, there's also, so while there is a technology that will enhance our capacity to predict who will perform better in the future, there's also got to be a system within the organization that will ensure that the hiring practice and the model that will be created will not be taken advantage of and will not be used to discriminate. But again, let's look at the word discrimination in a less political context. Every day we do discriminate. When you choose the restaurant to eat, you discriminate between what you feel you like to eat. When you choose a life partner, you discriminate, and you have to discriminate. And there are bases for this. However, in the process of discriminating, you will have to ensure that there will not be any unfair practice that will put other races, cultures, genders at an unfair disadvantage in terms of opportunities. So yeah, it's a tricky situation to navigate through. In the US, for example, they have what we call here an EEOC, an Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that ensures that discrimination is not present in the hiring. For instance, they consider it illegal now to require applicants to submit pictures because it has been found out in research that even if you put CVs that are of equal qualifications, and experiments have proven this, they put in group A, for instance, for lack of a better term, a pretty picture, and in group B, for example, a homely picture, for example, they send it out to a random number of HR offices and ask these people, the HR managers, to indicate the hireability of these applicants. True enough, the pretty picture got higher scores, even though the qualification and the criteria for the job at hand had nothing to do at all with beauty. So this is where discrimination is now present.
Yeah, I believe in some organizations, I think it's mostly in multinational organizations, they also have like, what's this, a percentage that they have to fill up, right, for inclusivity.
Yes, yeah.
Isn't that
yes,
also,
that's right.
But isn't that also like a discrimination thing? It's because they want to fill that up if that person is not that qualified, but just because he's a certain type of person, then sometimes,
Exactly.
right? Doesn't
Yes.
it work like that as well?
Sometimes they even call it reverse discrimination now because
Yes.
Well, in the ideal sense of the word, it has to be like blind without any quota, so to speak. One thing closer to home, for example, my older brother was once discriminated, for example, from entering. He applied in the San Francisco Police Department, but he wasn't accepted even though he was one of the top scorers in the entrance exam.
Okay.
Because his family name, well, Boholz, didn't sound, it sounded foreign. It sounded probably German or American. And they said they had to fill in an Asian quota. And then when brother showed up, hey, I'm all Asian. Sorry, it has been failed now. So yeah, that happens as well.
Oh my. But now going back to performance. Yes, Joe, go ahead.
It's a performance. If you're looking at, so we have baseline expectations. So what we're doing is we're trying to be as inclusive and diverse as possible. So there is a move right now na tanggalin na nga rin yung biodata na yan, yung resume na yan, so that it won't be a basis for, preferences. But what do you think, Rick, can actually neutralize whatever this baseline discrimination there is when you really try to objectively predict performance? What are the interventions necessary for organizations to keep that balance? Because you're right, talagang magdi-discriminate because you want the best for your organization. You're paying them salaries, lalo pa yun, tumataas, salaries are going high, right? So the investments must be worth it. So how do you neutralize those mga bias-inducing factors that are always present when you make decisions?
Well, again, organizations have to survive. Organizations have to set their eyes on increasing productivity. They have to strategize their decision making, and whether we like it or not, they have to use predictors. So I don't think we can do away with requirements about people's information that will help us to predict their future performance. What I think we need to do is to cancel out those factors that we require from people, from applicants, that will put them at a disadvantage, a necessary disadvantage. When I say a necessary disadvantage, when they are being judged now on certain factors that are not related at all to the position. Let's say straightforward example would be, if you're looking for a professor of statistics, for example, you have to discriminate. You can't just take somebody who knows a little statistics or a little math. You have to have somebody who has had an experience, 5-year experience in this or that. You have to look at previous performance. But the moment you look for criteria that do not have any direct impact on the person's performance, then I think that would put the others at a disadvantage now.
Like
so it has to be like competency based.
Yeah. I agree.
So, yung gender, Rick, saka yung weight, religion, favorite.
Oo. If you are recruiting somebody to be in a submarine and somebody who will fit a particular window, then you might consider weight. But in thousands of other jobs, I have not come across any theoretical or statistical model that indicated weight to be related to performance. So so
well, so how does it work?
Which one?
Predicting performance. Is there a particular tool that you use? It's very specific to the function, right?
Okay. I would say tools, not a specific tool, but tools and a process and a method. I would say that. Let me give you a concrete example. I did a little research in one of the universities I used to teach in the past, and I titled it just that, Predictors of Faculty Performance. So it's basically a research process that engages in data mining. So I dug in whatever available HR data they had, previous psychological tests that they took, performance measures that have been established for several years. And they call this linear regression methods in analyzing the data, trying to see which one correlated with performance. And I also did the same thing to one of the MNCs in Mactan, export processing zone in the past. One funny thing I remember was that when the model came up, when I presented to management the results, okay, this is the model for an ideal management performance. Interestingly, I forget now a lot of this, but one of the factors that I found out was that the better performers were the ones who did not have college degrees. And
interesting.
Those who were enrolled in a night school in Cebu while doing their jobs during the day, because they didn't have the economic capacities back then to finish college. And it was one of the predictors of good performers. And as a matter of fact, when I presented it to management, it was met with a lot of resistance. And then I told them, hey, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you the results. And then they said, maybe your sample size wasn't big enough. And then I go I distributed the questionnaires to the whole population, not just the sample. It was everybody. And yes, it was met with resistance because the model that came up after the research was that the profile, so to speak, revealed that the better performers were the ones who come from the provinces, who grew up in the provinces, not in the cities, the ones who did not finish college, but those who took up night school to finish the college degree while performing their jobs, those who had undergone this training, etc., etc. And if you want to hire somebody who might, have a promise for good performance in the future, these factors you might need to consider. And we can even put a weight to these factors. So yeah, that's one of the examples of how it's done. Creating a model, creating an algorithm to choose the better performers.
Wow. Okay. So that's very interesting. Like, so it has to be tailor fit the way an organization, because the profile will have to fit the organization. Right?
Yes.
So
that
you mentioned
why
managers?
It has to be
So you mentioned
supervisors and managers. Yeah.
Yes. Is there, if you compare, which one is easier to predict? Like, for example, the higher you go up the organization, you will have to predict for capacity and capability to do decisions, to produce results, to manage people. Are there predictors for those scales that we need the higher you go up the organization? Or is it easier to profile the lower levels of the organization?
Okay, I'd have to admit that it is easier to create a theoretical model to predict performance of employees in the lower levels of the organization for a couple of reasons. Number one, measures of performance at the lower levels of the organization are easier to measure, such as sales, production, accidents, wastage, and these are easier. However, as one goes up the hierarchy in the organization, the measures of performance become more abstract, right? Like, how do you measure supervisory skills? How do you measure good leadership, for example? But it's still very possible to measure these things. And this is now the turf of psychometrics. We have to construct first valid tools to measure performance. And that's an assumption that needs to hold water talaga when you create a model to predict performance. Because if, for example, if at the start the measures of performance are not reliable and valid, then even the most sophisticated statistical model will not hold. If the measures of performance are shaky, are unreliable, and invalid. So that's why management people undergo assessment centers, undergo a battery of psychological tests to measure certain aptitudes, skills, abilities, and habits, and leadership factors. But then again, these psychometric tools have to be proven, have to have validity and reliability. Okay. And this is the tricky part there.
Yes. So I think you've answered it very clearly, Rick. Yes, we can predict performance. There will be complexities as they move up the organization, but the data and the foundation of that data will be your specific organization. So it has to be tailor-made. So it has to be scientific and it has to be very objective. So your foundation has to be correct so that from there you can launch your specific systems and tools, right? To make predicting performance valid.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Wow. Ms. Joan?
Mind blown ako eh. I'm still processing it. My mind is blown, right? It's very interesting. It's really a science.
Joan runs her company, Rick, so this could be very useful for her and for just about everything.
For everyone, for our listeners, right? Because sometimes upon hiring, even during paper screening, you will already see the profile of the person that you think will fit this position. I think it's highly critical initially for recruiters, but then for also when moving up when moving up your people, right? It's also important to use the methods that you have shared so that we can ensure success for our people.
Yes.
That's I couldn't agree more. But it's not just in recruitment. As a matter of fact, it permeates in many aspects of the organization, such as like workforce planning,
Right.
performance management, or how do we allocate resources in training, for example,
Mhm.
Or when you
measuring.
started it, Rick,
Yeah,
when we started it, that it's, even finding a partner in life, you have to be very
Yeah.
sure exactly what you want so
In all
that
aspects of our lives, no?
hindi lang yung tall,
exactly.
tall,
Na nga daw
handsome,
ng
and good.
pagkain di ba?
Yeah,
Yeah,
very good.
more
So
so in life.
thank
Yeah.
you, Rick. We're so happy for the time that you have spent with us. And by the way, to all our listeners out there, Dr. Frederick Bohos will be in Cebu on
Wow.
August 1 to 16. So if you happen to be, an organization based in Cebu, and if you want to tap his expertise, feel free to get in touch with him, please. Rick, can you just plug in your email address so they can communicate with you direct? Anywhere in the Philippines, by the way. So this August 1 to 16.
Yeah. It would be exciting to meet with you, whoever's interested. My email is Frederick Boholst, Fred without an E in between. It's just Frederick Boholst at yahoo.com. You can Google me, and there are just a few Boholsts around, so you can easily spot me. Yeah, I look forward to
your brother who hasn't joined the SFPD, right?
excuse me, Joe?
Yeah, there are very few bohos, including your brother who was not able to join SFPD, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Frederick, Fredrick, and Bohos is BOHOLST at yahoo.com. So any opportunity to have his expertise, especially when he talks about performance and anything else, that would be an advantage for your organization. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you
for
so much
having
for
me
your
here.
time.
Thank you, Job. Thank you,
But Joan?
Joan.
Yeah. And thank you, dear listeners. Thank you to our technical support, our team behind the scenes, Martin Alcantara, Miss Sarah Niguas, and of course, our president, Miss Beth Nasol. We hope to see you on our next episode. This is actually our 9th episode. And
Yes.
yeah, right? 9th na.
Meron tayong listener from
Kenya? Somalia, right?
Somalia. Meron tayo, sabi ni Martin, from Somalia. So despite all the turbulence in Somalia, someone there took time off to really listen to People Watch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is People Watch. Perspectives Matter. Bye.